Hello, welcome to Time with Tim. Today we're talking about what I've learned through working with leaders about their mission and how they've used their mission to progress their sense of purpose and really propel their leadership, to inspire and impact more people more positively. So there's a couple of examples I'm going to call on. The first one, really sort of goes back to a volunteering experience I had in South America a decade ago now. And there were a number of, sort of senior corporate executives that were there. I had taken a break from corporate leadership myself. And I remember a specific conversation we had where one of them talked about having worked with an organization called Habitat for Humanity in America, and how this had really sort of started a process for him of sort of really reflecting on what contribution was he making. He was a marketer. He was working in marketing agencies, working with some of the biggest brands in the business, Disney and Mercedes-Benz and these guys. And he found that he understood the goals. He certainly had a strong sense of personal mission around driving the impact these brands were having, but there was no concept of purpose. And he really found himself, very successful, but very lost and very sort of dismayed, essentially, by where he was. And what he found was that these organizations that he was working with were really sort of struggling to bring the right people, bring volunteers with skills as well as hearts. And he applied his experience and his marketing savvy, just to help them with some basic messaging, and some sort of methodologies to ask other volunteers to spread the word. So that was an obvious example of mission and purpose because it's related to not-for-profit, and people always sense that those sectors have got the most mission and purpose alignment. And to an extent, I think they do have it, but they also have a lot of their own challenges, as we'll come to another time. So the second example I'll give is, excuse me, a woman that I was working with, going back now about 2 years, and she was one of the most driven people that I'd encountered at that point in time. She'd come into an organization that was in turnaround mode. She'd come into a culture that was extremely toxic and dysfunctional. And she was just so devoted to looking at people in a way that they hadn't felt before, and really just sort of connecting with them at an individual level, even though she was a senior executive and they were, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 steps down on the ladder, connecting with each of them and essentially saying, why are you here? And really listening to their responses, and then connecting each of their roles and the goals that those roles had to the overall mission and purpose of the organization, which was essentially around enabling organizations to more productively tell their story. Okay. So it's kind of a combination of a branding and a sort of a product merchandising play. Right. So not something that sounds particularly inspirational or grandiose, but a lot of the people in the organization felt that it was just stuff and they were just moving things down the line. And what this woman did really very, very successfully was connect all the dots, bring everybody together around this greater purpose of we enable the clients that we work with, which included government agencies, which included charities, which included startups, which included other big corporates, to tell their story in a more compelling way. And yeah, the uplift was fantastic. And the impact that her leadership had was really very, very significant. And she went from there on to bigger, better things. So that's just a couple of basic insights, things that I've learned by working with and observing other leaders, senior corporate executives, reconnecting with mission, either by stepping out of corporate life and doing something benevolent, or by really going long and deep into corporate life, but right back to the human level, down to the individual level. So question for you, have you seen that yourself? Have you seen a leader, change tack, or a new leader come into an organization that you've worked with, and without changing anything, from a capital perspective, without bringing lots of new people in, just the way that their style impacts and the way that they can show you and show your colleagues essentially why you're there and what your contribution is, and how has that made a change that's benefited you. I look forward to the comments. Thanks. See you tomorrow.